A, and so 16 to around 18 was LOS B. Then around 13 hours to 16 hours was LOS C. 10 to 12 was LOS D, and anything less than 10 hours was considered as LOS E level of service. And this was users perceived. This was what the users perceived was the existing service hours of the city, which was around 17 hours. And if you look at the USL curve, which is this line, so you will find that the user's zone of tolerance, even though the user's zone of tolerance is between 20 hours and over here somewhere around 15 hours, the existing service hours is around 17 hours for service. And user have reached, so this was basically the service where you would see a high increase in user satisfaction, but the current service is actually above the plateau level. And so it is above the higher sigmoid point, and there is a plateau which has been reached. So this is for the various attributes, and this is for Visakhapatnam, Rajkot. So just to overall summarize the attribute characteristics, there was a distinct similarity, if you will observe, between user satisfaction and service level of bus for Visakhapatnam and Rajkot. Unlike in Kolkata, where most of the attributes are basic, in Visakhapatnam and Rajkot you will find they're characterized mainly as excitement, and that is because the bus services were comparatively new, and the users are used to low levels of service. So a slight improvement in the service, introduction of the BRT in Rajkot suddenly led to an increase in their level of satisfaction. So most of the attributes are classified were as excitement. So just to kind of summarize the entire thing. So the study basically validated the observations of previous research that there exists an asymmetric relation. So it's not a linear relationship that you improve service and there will be increase in ridership. So after a certain point, irrespective of whether you improve the service or it doesn't make a difference to the user. And this asymmetric relationship, varied based on socioeconomic characteristics and specifically user experience. So the user, if they're used to a better improvement, a better service with, or they're used to transport service with alternatives which give, which are at high level of service, their perception of the service varies. And simply the way forward was, most of the study was basically for quantitative attributes, and the qualitative attributes were not taken into consideration because at that point of time we had time constraint, and we couldn't figure out how to bring this into the qualitative, because end of the day the qualitative experience also matters. So this study was specifically for quantitative service attributes, and qualitative is something which we can further explore. These were some of the references. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiyali.
I'm sorry. I think it was. I tried to brain everything as fast as I could.
No. I think we have time. I'm actually quite intrigued to hear from your data that you improve things and things are not really, people are not going to actually think of them if that's the net sum. But I'll open it up first to the audience. And if there's someone who'd like to come in with questions for Tiyali or observations.
I had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, Sachin.
Actually, I would be interested in seeing the survey, because how the survey is capturing the experience of the people, that is a kind of
Yes. So basically,
because numbers, yeah.
So basically, what was done? So the survey was, so initially we conducted a pilot survey. Okay. So and we did a pilot survey to the first pilot survey was more like a Reiki survey, and it kind of helped us to fine tune a questionnaire. And then we did a user perception survey. So we did a user perception on board buses, and what we did was, it was so for EM bypass corridor, we had identified from where the buses started, and what was the origin, the terminal points in the bus services, and the when the surveys were being conducted, so we would do it on board buses, because in that way, because it was just not about getting user perception for satisfaction. It included other parameters also, and basically the actual survey was done on in a threefold basis. So after the pilot survey, we did the bus user perception survey on board buses, where we would board the bus at the terminals, and we would try to and the service was actually conducted for an entire period, for from say around 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening, and there was a survey team, of course, and uh, passengers were randomly selected. But the only thing that we did was, we always found it, so it was a process. So you would board the bus, and so we aimed for the terminals, because at that point, you would find a seat. So we kind of developed a process. So we would have, say, every bus, we would have, say, three surveyors, one at the entrance, and one somewhere located in between, and one at the end. And all these passengers, so the surveyors would sit, so they would, because they were at the terminals, so they would get a seat. And so the first person who sits beside them, they would survey them. And then, and slowly, because almost one questionnaire would take around 15 minutes. So they would survey them, and by that time, you would have a few more passengers. And because there are three persons already in the bus, so it would kind of create a buzz, and people, users are intrigued by everything. So because there are three surveys or anything, so you would have people peep in, peep out. And then so after surveying the person sitting beside you, you would get up, offer the person standing beside you, give them the seat, and request them to fill up the surveys. And and this was the way we kind of conducted the survey. So it was basically a random survey, so we did not specifically select, so whoever was ready to answer. But yes, they were specifically for bus users, and they were on board service. We also conducted a bit of household survey also, and that was for, so we selected a buffer of around 1 kilometer, actually a buffer of 1 kilometer along all the corridors. And so we identified major residential areas along these corridors. So for EM bypass corridor, your Pendurthi corridor, your Simachalam corridor, and also for your PRTS corridor in Rajkot, we identified a buffer area of 1 kilometer, and the major residential areas were identified. Yes, in household survey, the challenge was that we couldn't cover high income group. So if you look at, if I share with you, just a minute, if I share with you the screen, you will, the sample composition, that just, you will find that the high income group is not that well represented. It is basically, most of it is basically the lower income group and the middle income group. And if you look, and so we try to define the characteristics based on sex, age, the income category, the vehicle ownership, because the surveys were conducted throughout the day, so we had both peak hour and off peak hour, and the bus type, and also how frequently they use. So so basically we captured most of the irregular users from the household survey. We got some from on bus user survey also, and because we conducted the survey during off peak hours also, so we could actually capture a few of irregular users. And then based on trip purpose, so whether they were doing a compulsory trip like work or education, or whether they were using bus services for non-compulsory trips like recreation or marketing, shopping, or just health, or just accompanying someone somewhere. So Yes. Does that answer your question?
Well, I was actually wanting to see the relation between questions and the attributes.
Question.
But it's
I
okay. That will be a little longer discussion.
yeah, that'll be a longer
Yes, yes.
discussion.
Uh,
What I can just basically
of,
tell you, so if you look at the survey question, I have a small thing on survey questionnaire. So the questionnaire consisted information on their location, demographic characteristics, travel characteristics, trip characteristics, uh, and the importance of various service quality attributes, their existing perceived level of service. So it was what they perceived as the existing service level. So even though say the bus arrives say every 5 minutes, but the user thinks that it arrives at every 10 minutes, we consider that, and then their level of satisfaction. Yes. Anything else?
yeah, maybe you can share it with Sachin.
Yeah. Yes.
Fine. Yeah. Tiyali, sorry, may I ask you to please turn on your video now?
Yeah. Sure.
Thanks. All right. Uh, any other thanks, Tiyali? Any other questions? Himanshu, I think you were asking.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. I just have a quick question.
Yes,
This is
please, Purva.
Purva.
Hi.
Apart from user satisfaction, are there any other performance indicators that you looked upon during your research?
Yes. So basically, so that's what I was saying. So I looked into importance. Uh, importance. I looked into performance, and I also looked into users' willingness to pay for a service. So the importance was looked into from the stated importance perspective, where I undertook a Reddit analysis. Then I used derived importance, which is based on. So I can say that this is if I anyone you ask, they have a tendency to over exaggerate or overemphasize importance of something, and underestimate or under state that the service is underperforming. So when you look at satisfaction, people tend to always hold back, while if you talk about importance, they'll be like, yes, it is very important. And so the study looked into importance approach from both from a stated importance approach, where I used Reddit analysis to analyze that, and then there was a derived importance where I used ordinal logistic regression along with partial log likelihood. So we kind of used both of it to develop importance performance analysis. And that was the importance. And from there, we identified attributes which were of higher, which were both important as well as people were considered as satisfied, or so it was of higher performance. Then we did a performance analysis. Part of the performance analysis, one was to define the LOS scale from a user perception. Then we did this USL curve to identify at what level of service, how much percentage of people are satisfied, and what is the nature of relationship. And combining this two, we defined a performance, we defined a performance scale. And but so yes, you have importance, you have performance, but end of the day, whatever you state, money matters. So even if it is a good service or everything that is people are satisfied, if people are not ready to pay for the service, it doesn't make sense. And so we also had a user's willingness to pay concept, which I did not present over here. So we used we used actually discrete choice modeling to do a user's willingness to pay, and that is which attributes. We initially had say around 58 attributes. For quantitative, it was brought down to say around 2 attributes. And finally, we found there were actually 3 or 4 attributes which needs to be prioritized for geography cities. Does it answer your question, Purva?
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks. Very interesting body of work, seriously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Purva, you're also a planner, I believe, or you've engineer, but you've done.
Actually, I am a civil engineer by background. So I have a master's in structures and I have a PhD in construction. So I had dealt with a little bit of planning things. My work was mostly in planning and it's basically about design planning and design management. So
Right.
I dealt with all these things in terms of survey based things and tool based things during my research also.
Okay.
So anyway, thank you.
Manchut, would you like to ask a question? Sorry. No.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Tiyali. So, in your attributes, you focused on many points and which were very relevant for quantitative study. But somewhere did you come across this idea of frequency, where on a particular route, I mean, a city would have 40, 50 routes,
Yes,
and
I did
on
I did not consider. I mean, it was not frequency as in service headway. Yeah.
because service headway, yes, I mean that would give out the headway time between the two buses or two vehicles, but frequency in the sense where a dedicated frequency set for each and every city, because in comparison with what a city without BRT route would have and a city with BRT route would have. So the service over there or the LOS over there would be really faster when it has BRT. So did in your study did you come across the bus bunching idea? That how did you
Actually,
tackle that?
so the thing is, bus bunching. So this work was, again, my PhD was part of it's basically part of 3 sets of work. So we came across bus